we talk about tyres on F1 Explains, I remember the poem Jolyon Palmer came up with on a previous episode. They're round, they're black, they keep you on the track. Not just a good driver and commentator, young Jolyon Palmer, is he? Tyres are so important in F1. The temperature and condition of a driver's tyre have a huge influence on how they drive. Teams take so much care of them, wrapping them in blankets to keep them warm, scrubbing and washing them to keep them clean, as if they were round rubber poppies, possibly. Anyway, hello, I'm Christian Hugill, and those are words I never thought I'd say on an official F1 podcast. We take the questions that you send to f1explains@f1.com and find an expert to answer them. And this week we're talking tyres with Pirelli. It's your guide to why they're important and what's changed for this season. So let's start with a quick guide to F1 tyres. Pirelli makes 5 different types of dry tyre, each of a different hardness. They then choose 3 of those types to be the soft, medium and hard for each race weekend. The red striped soft tyre gives you good grip immediately. The white hard takes time to get grippy but lasts longer. The yellow medium is in the middle. Tread will explain why later. Then there are the blue wet and green intermediate tyres which have grooves in them to clear the water if it rains. We've mentioned Pirelli. Yvonne from Los Angeles asks, why do all teams have to use Pirelli tyres? Well, Yvonne, because they are the official tyre supplier. F1 picked Pirelli for tyres back in 2011. There have been times in F1 history with more than one tyre supplier used at time, but it caused a few problems. It meant there were often big performance differences between cars. One supplier's tyres worked better on that racetrack. Also back then, teams were allowed to do unlimited testing and produce as many different specifications of tyres as they wanted. It was hugely expensive and not
three.
Just having one tyre supplier is that it's the same for every team. It means the driver and the car makes the difference. So let's get some answers from someone who's been a huge part of F1 since Pirelli became the sole supplier. Head of motorsport at the company, Mario. Mario, a warm welcome back to F1 Explains. Great to see you.
Thank you for your invitation. It's great to be here.
Let's start by asking a question we've been asking a lot on F1 Explains so far this season. How is it different in 2026? Of course, in particular in this case, how are the 2026 tyres different from the 2025 ones?
Yeah, an easy answer is they are smaller. The size is different. Because the new Formula 1 is to have a car that is lighter, more agile, and also the tyres are part of this. And that means that we had to redesign completely the tire because the size has a big influence on the footprint of the tire. It is the part of the tire in contact with the track, and so we had to design the tires in a completely new way.
None of us international.
With the targets that
none of us international. Hata Chris alimwona none of us. Najua Chris.
To have tires with a certain level of degradation, with different compounds able to generate different strategies, and a mix of one stop, two stop, and create some unpredictability during a race. But clearly having a new car with different load on each tire, with different speed, with a different aero package that is now active and is operating the tire in a completely different way, we had to redesign the tires completely.
Yeah, so the principle of the tyres is still the same, but as Mario says, that
Marto Carvery.
Mr. Kaburu.
Buda nede.
Msee, nimekutafuta mbaya.
Ewan, memang problem ribu screen mas kati kili apa itu atas dinane tiga ini. Jadi ya itu ni mereka kapam pejana jioni dola ni kopi vina kama manamba kuona huko.
Oh. Hizi ya jo manze kaka. Uko fiti lakini?
Yeah, ni kopi. Yo, kesho niko for refa kubui.
Resi ko saa ngapi?
Hello. Lulu niko kabambe sai somgetu nikizi. Sini quarter cup. Ada quarter cup.
Hebu mato hebu bota na kuvutia sawa?
But as Mario says, they're 25 millimeters narrower at the front, and the rear tyres are 30 millimeters narrower. They still sit on 18-inch rims, so the wheel rims themselves have stayed the same. Mario, does those narrower tyres have an impact on grip at all?
A little bit. They are narrower, as you said, but also the diameter is smaller, and that means that the footprint has a different shape.
Niaje kaka?
But the most important
acha ni confirm dakika moja.
The fact that having a smaller tire, you generate more heat into the tire because of the smaller footprint.
No ETC card is inserted.
Questions about tyres all the time. It's a firm favourite topic of our listeners. This one comes in from Michael. Michael says, how does Pirelli choose which of the 5 compounds to bring to each race weekend?
We have to analyze, first of all, the track layout and the level of energy that each track is putting into the tire. So we consider tracks with, let's assume the track, categorize the track in high severity, medium severity and low severity, first of all. Second parameter is the type of tarmac, how aggressive is the tarmac. For example, in Monaco you can find a street asphalt that is very smooth, in Bahrain is aggressive, and this has an influence on tires. The third parameter is about weather condition expected. If the race could be very hot or quite cold. In Spa usually you don't find very warm conditions, while if you go to Singapore it's normally very, very hot. And the final, but probably the most important parameter is our, let's call it database. So we have now a lot of information coming from the past that we can compare. Obviously we have a complete different situation now with the new cars, with the 2026 cars, not just what we did in the past, looking back at previous years and choosing in previous years. We have to consider many parameters, but our previous experience is important.
F1 of course races in Japan this weekend, Mario. It's a circuit with lots of long high-speed corners. Long sweeping high-speed corners tend to be harder on tyres, don't they? So my guess would be this weekend it's the hardest compound tyres.
Absolutely. We decided to select C1, C2 and C3, that is that are the three hardest compounds in our range. There is an additional element that is important in Japan is they decided to resurface part of the track, the majority of the track, and obviously the new asphalt has an influence on the characteristics of the tires and the level of degradation expected. So usually when you have a new tarmac, there are some elements that are difficult to predict, create a little bit of uncertainty during the race weekend. That's another element that is quite important when we select the tires. Sometimes we don't know exactly what is going to happen on that circuit. Let's consider Madrid this year. Madrid is completely new. So what can we do for Madrid? Obviously an analysis on the layout to understand how much energy, as I said, the circuit is putting into the tires, and we work together with the teams to do that. So they send us simulations and we work around their simulation to understand this first parameter, and then we contact the promoter, the organizer, to have information also on the type of tarmac they are planning to lay down on the street, on the circuit, in order to have as much information as we can, but there is always something that is not under control, let's say.
And that's something I didn't realise, Mario, until I became a bigger fan of Formula One, that even the type of tarmac used from racetrack to racetrack can have an impact on how those tyres wear.
Absolutely, and that's the reason why when we go at each track we measure the roughness, and we consider micro roughness and macro roughness because they have a different effect on tire. Micro roughness is I can translate it into the how the small stones that are making the tarmac are sharp, and the macro roughness is the texture of the tarmac, and these are two elements that are quite important when we consider or we try to imagine the level of grip of each tarmac. On top of that, it's now a few years that we also measure the grip. We have what we call the grip tester. It is a small machine with a reference tire that is measuring the level of grip of each circuit, and we categorize also that. And so with all this information we can hopefully select the best combination for each race.
It's absolutely fascinating, it really is. Another of our listeners' questions, F1 Explained at F1.com to send in yours. Raj from Switzerland asks, how many tyres does Pirelli give each team per weekend, and how do they keep track of which tyres are used?
The number of tyres is easy because it's defined by the condition. There is no difference between sprint events and standard events, but I would say the total number is quite similar. We are talking about 13 sets of slick tyres per car, plus 5 sets of intermediate tyres, plus 2 sets of extreme wet tyres. The total is 20 sets per car. 20 sets per car means that considering all the cars plus some spare tyres that we need to be on the track, we are bringing more than 1,800 tyres per event.
It's a lot of tyres, isn't it, Mario? It's a lot of tyres.
Absolutely, and on each tyre, to come to your second question, we have a barcode that is provided by the FIA. First of all, this barcode is a unique number that is the guarantee that we cannot allocate any special tyre to anyone. Why I am saying that? Because once we have the production, the batch of tyres available for a race, we send all the list of the barcodes to the FIA, and the FIA is making a random allocation of each tyre to each track. So it's not Pirelli who define this tyre is for Hamilton, this tyre is for Verstappen or whoever, but it is the FIA in a complete random way. All the tyres are clearly the same, but this is an additional element to guarantee that there is no special tyre for anyone. And thanks to this barcode, we can monitor and record step of the life of the production, from the raw materials used in the production to the end of life of the tires. Because as you probably know, at the end of each event we collect all the tires and we recycle the tires. We send them back to the UK in our facility, and we recycle all the tires to generate secondary materials. So you know how important is sustainability, not only for Pirelli but for Formula 1, and for that reason we have this system in place with all the tires used in F1, F2 and F3.
On a similar line, Eva asks, who brings the tyres to each race? Is it Pirelli or is it the teams?
It is Pirelli. We bring the tyres to each race. We have our fitting operations there, so the teams are bringing the rims to our fitting area. We fit the tyres, balance the tyres, and give the tyres to the teams. At this point, and this happens usually between Wednesday and Thursday before each event. At this point, the teams are in charge of managing the tires during the weekend. Obviously, we have an engineer allocated on each team, plus a couple of technicians. They are there to support the teams in operating the tires properly. We give them prescriptions. What it means, basically they have to respect a minimum starting pressure. They have to stay below a certain temperature in blankets, and they have to respect some parameters on camber. So there are three important elements that are camber, pressure, and temperature in blankets that we control. The rest is up to the team. So also the strategy. So it's not Pirelli that is making the strategy for any show. What we do, because don't forget that we have to treat everyone in the same way. Sporting equity is obviously a priority for the sport, because as a sole supplier we have not just to supply the same product but also the same service. So our engineers are trained to collect a certain amount of data and to give those data to the teams. There are some data that are very important. For example, we are the only one having the information and the data from the teams. And for that, we create some averages, like average pressure, average wear life, and so on, that we distribute to the teams. So teams have not confidential data from a competitor. We cannot provide any confidential data from a competitor, but they have averages that can be useful for them to understand if their car is operating in a similar way to theirs or not. The wear profile is a good example. If your wear profile is too much on the inside, you're probably using a bit more standard than the others. Just to make it simple, just to explain it in a simple way, but they are very interested in the data we provide, because all those averages are really important for them to try to understand how is the situation compared to the others, even if we don't disclose anything confidential, and everything is agreed with all the teams, with the FIA and with the